Well, hello. Our theme this Advent, it being Advent Sunday, on Sunday, is hope. In fact, slightly more than that, it's hope in the midst of despair. I was reading not so long ago the story of Grace Darling, and quite honestly, there's a picture there of despair, if you ever needed one, because Grace looked out of her window and happened to see, in the middle of a storm at sea, that a ship had crashed on the rock and that a number of survivors were stuck right out at sea, a mile out at sea, on a rock, slippery, covered in seaweed, desperate situation. They were doomed. She knew the the lifeboat was 4 or 5 miles down the coast and couldn't possibly reach them in time. So she decided with her father that they must go out and rescue them. And off they went, and it's a story of tremendous courage. And she made a huge impact upon Victorian society and on Queen Victoria herself. Now, can you imagine those people? Talk about a situation of utter despair. There you are on the rock, the wind, the waves, the cold, and you just know that sooner or later you're going to be swept off that rock into the freezing sea. And then all of a sudden you see in the distance this very faint light bobbing up and down. You hardly dare breathe and hope. But it's true, someone is coming. There is hope. Well, that's not unlike the situation that many people found themselves in the ancient world when the early Christians were preaching and teaching about Jesus Christ. Paul describes people in his day as being without hope and without God in the world. And the writer to Hebrews talks about people living their entire lives in slavery to the fear of death. Well, they had no hope. They had no hope whatever that there might be anything for them beyond death. And now suddenly they discover that Christ has come as a human being, born as a baby, has been crucified, and most importantly of all, has been raised from the dead. The resurrection's the key to the whole thing. Without the resurrection, the incarnation and crucifixion really would be forgotten. We wouldn't know anything about them. But the resurrection has made it all possible. And so there is a sense in which you can say, if you're a person who's got into that boat, Grace Darling's boat, you've got off the rock, you're in the boat, you can say, I have been saved. And that's true, but only partly true, because I'm really thinking about what's sometimes called the 3 tenses of salvation. I have been saved, I am being saved, and I will be saved. That's what something every Christian can say. I have been saved by Christ. I'm being saved. I'm on my way to salvation, but salvation is still full salvation is still up ahead of me. See, when those people got off the rock into the boat, I dare say there must have been absolute jubilation to be off that horrible place and in the boat. And it must have just have been like, hard to put into words. And then the reality strikes them. This is a very small boat, and the shore is a very, very long way away. The waves are powerful, and the whole thing could end in disaster with so many people inside the boat. So there's lots to concern them, lots to be afraid of, and they need the encouragement, I guess, of Grace Darling and her father to believe that they can get to the end. Well, the early Christians that Peter's writing to are probably in a very similar situation to that, because they're full of hope to begin with, and then gradually they begin to discover that this Christianity is putting them in harm's way. Their neighbours are hostile to them. I guess that's what Peter means when he talks about the various trials that they're facing. They haven't yet got to full-blown persecution, but that's coming. And you see, the emperor didn't care if you believed in Jesus or not. You could worship Jesus all you wanted. That was fine, as long as you worshipped him as well. It was important to worship Caesar as God. And that, of course, is the one thing that the early Christians refused to do. We're not going to worship Caesar. We're going to worship Christ, our only King. So they were in a bad place. They were on their way to salvation, but they were facing various trials, and those trials were clearly going to get worse. Sometimes it's easy to imagine in the middle of trouble and suffering that actually God's forgotten us, that He's perhaps punishing us, or that or that He's taken His eye off us. I remember a young man who started in ministry in the Bristol diocese many years ago. He'd finished his curacy and was just starting his first incumbency and was full of hope and expectation and excitement. And within a very short time of beginning his ministry, he contracted a most severe form of ME, the kind, where you just can't even get off the sofa. He was on the sofa most of the day. He couldn't write a letter. He could hardly make a telephone call. And this went on for months and months and months. Well, I was secretary of the DEF at that time when we'd invited somebody called Alec Mateer to come and speak to us. He was quite a famous speaker in his day. And who should turn up but this young incumbent, Steve, his name was. And there he met Alec Mateer and was telling him the story, which was the first time I'd heard it. The last time I saw Steve, had been a long time before. So I was really astonished to see him there. And he was saying, I recovered almost instantaneously, he said. I was, I was just unable to move. I could do nothing. And now I'm fully active. I can work. I can work a full week. It's incredible. And he said, God just took my illness right away. He is so good. And Alec Mateer said, don't say that. Well, that took us by surprise. He said, don't say that. Don't say, God took my illness away. He is so good. Never forget that He was good when He gave it to you. Well, that's the perspective, I think, that Peter wants the early Christians here in his church to have, that actually God is with them. God both not only takes them out of trouble, but is actually with them as they go into trouble. He's always there, always loving them. And there's hope for the future. Whatever happens now, there is a new world coming. We won't end up as angels. That's a nonsense. If people sometimes say that, don't they? We will be in a new world, in God's world. And, the Bible actually doesn't talk about us going to heaven. It actually says that God will recreate the world. There'll be a new heaven and a new earth. And I guess our new solar system, planets, everything will be restored. So this world will be as it should have been, I guess, from the outset. But it will be a very material world. The Bible often talks about heaven as a garden and sometimes as a city, very material images. But a garden, if you like, a city, a world which is free from the horrors of this world, pain and bereavement and grief and so on, that's all going to be gone. And we're going to be living there in a new place with God right in the middle of us. That's the world that God holds out for us. That's His promise to us as people. And He also says, you need a body to live in that world. And when we say in the Creed, I believe in the resurrection, that's what we mean. Actually, we believe in two resurrections. We believe in the resurrection of Jesus, and we believe in our own resurrection, and the two are intimately connected. If I have died with Christ and been raised with Christ, if I'm in Christ, then just as He's been raised, I must be raised. So we don't have to hope we'll go to heaven. It's guaranteed because of the death and resurrection of Jesus Christ. So we have the three tenses of salvation. We have been saved by Jesus in His death and resurrection. We are being saved right now, even though we go through various trials and problems, and sometimes God might feel very far away, and we will be saved in the future. We will end up in that new world, just as those people got out of that boat that Grace Darling and her father had brought to them and stood on the shore safe for the first time for many, many hours. All of these things are connected, aren't they? Because you can see that what Paul is saying is, Peter's saying, I want you now to kind of live a holy life, to live the life today that you'll be living in heaven. And also, of course, the future world does give us hope in the midst of despair. Another picture of despair you could pick was a story by Rob Parsons about a young girl. She was 14 years old, and he was at a church and went out with this youth group to a beach, and all the kids got out of the cars and ran off to play games and kind of cook the barbecue and all the rest of it. And Alicia, her name was, couldn't get out because she had terminal cancer. She was just 14 and a half years old. And in fact, she died within about 9 months of his meeting with her. And he felt desperately sorry for her. There were all her friends chasing off, just beginning their life as young adults. And she can't share any of it. She's lost everything. And as he talked to her, he said, she seemed so full of positivity, so full of hope. And he said to her, Alicia, he said, how do you manage this? And she said, quite simply this, she said, Rob, she said, I know where I'm going. That's exactly the message that Peter wants us to hear this morning. Even in the midst of despair, Christ brings hope.
step down into darkness, open my eyes, let me see beauty that made this heart adore you, hope of a life spent with you. Here I am to worship, here I am to bow down, here I am to say that you're my God. You're altogether lovely, altogether worthy, altogether wonderful to me. King of all days, oh so highly exalted, glorious in heaven above. Humbly you came to the earth you created, all for love's sake became poor. And here I am to worship, here I am to bow down, here I am to say that you're my God. You're altogether lovely, altogether worthy, altogether wonderful to me. And here I am to worship, here I am to bow down, here I am to say that you're my God. You're altogether lovely, altogether worthy, altogether wonderful to me. I'll never know how much it cost to see my sin upon that cross. I'll never know how much it cost to see my sin upon that cross. I'll never know how much it cost to see my sin upon that cross. Here I am to worship, here I am to bow down, here I am to say that you're my God. You're altogether lovely, altogether worthy, altogether wonderful to me. Here I am to worship,